I have a very special guest that I want to introduce to all of us here in the fellowship and to those of you that are watching online. We know that many of you are, of course, out of state and therefore can't vote in Montana politics and things of that nature. But I know that there's many of you that are watching that live right here in the valley. We'd rather have you here inside the service, but I know that many of you are watching across the valley. We have other people that are watching across the state of Montana. So no matter where you are, I think this guest is going to be very, very helpful and very encouraging to your heart. I have always believed, and I still will believe, and I will always believe, that the two most important political offices that you and I ever have the opportunity to vote for, not president, not U.S. Senate or U.S. Congress, the two most important offices that we have the privilege of voting for as Americans is the governor's seat and the sheriff's office. Those are in my opinion, those are the two most important offices in anybody's state. If you have a honest to God, true constitutionalist governor and an honest to God, true constitutionalist sheriff, it would be almost impossible for anyone to encroach on our liberties. It wouldn't matter what the president did, what the Congress did, or what the Supreme Court did. If you've got a constitutionalist sheriff and a constitutionalist governor, those two offices alone would be able to protect our liberties, unlike any other office that we have the pleasure and privilege of voting for. Trying to find true, honest to God, constitutionalist candidates is very difficult in these days and times, as you know. And the most important races, you cut me down a little bit, turn me back up a little bit. The most important races are almost always the primary races. That's not always true, but many times the primary races are the races that are more important because that's when you have good people running. The establishment runs their toadies and put all their money in advertising dollars and Chamber of Commerce crowd, and they get behind them, and then they win the primary, and the good guys lose. And so by the time you get to the general election, this is not always true. We got a constitutionalist running in the general election that doesn't have a primary opponent, Jerry O'Neill, and so his race doesn't apply to what I'm saying. But so many times, by the time you get to the general election, you're choosing between the lesser of two evils. And that's why nothing much changes. No matter whether it's Republican or a Democrat that gets elected, is because the really good guys lost in the primary. And people don't realize how important the primaries are. They think that party politics is where it's at, and that's not where it's at all. So finding somebody who is truly a constitutionalist, if they're a believer, even better, but truly a constitutionalist and understands the Bill of Rights and has the courage and the backbone to stand for the freedoms and the liberties protected in our Bill of Rights is very difficult. And when we do find one, it is our job as freedom-loving people to do everything we can to get behind these people with all of our time, with our treasure, with our prayers, and do everything we can to help them get elected, because I promise you, the powers that be are going to do everything they can to keep those kind of candidates from winning public office. So if the people don't do it, it will not get done. So it's really a privilege and a pleasure for me to introduce to you a man that I've come to know and have come to learn is a true, honest-to-God, constitutionalist sheriff's candidate. And he proved it already, not just with his mouth and what he says. A lot of people will say, oh, they're for the Second Amendment, they're for the Constitution, they'll say anything to get elected. But it's not what they say that counts, it's what they do. And this man, and I won't go into all details, I went over that in the rally, explained it to you, and you know what the story was. This man, and without me, I didn't even know that it was the law. I didn't know, because we'd been told that something else was the law. He immediately recognized that this was a violation of our constitutional liberties as residents here in the Flathead Valley and in America. And not only did he sympathize with the attempt to keep our liberty away from us, but he actually took action, and he went to the sheriff, he went to the KPD, and he went to the county attorney's office, and he got a unanimous consensus among those branches of government that there was absolutely no law for prohibiting us from bringing our firearms into that county fairgrounds building that we had the rally in the other night. And he took that action upon himself without being asked to do it or whatever. I've had the privilege of talking with him several times since and quizzing him and making sure that before I get up here and say something about a man, because you know me, I will not do this if I am not 100% convinced in my mind that I am telling the truth about what I'm saying. And I'm saying to you, I pray that this man will be our next sheriff, because if we elect Jordan White as our sheriff here in Flathead Valley, we will have, in the first time since I've been here, a true constitutionalist sheriff as people in the Flathead Valley. And I want you to give a real warm welcome. He's going to speak to us for about 10 minutes and share his heart. I want you to give a real warm welcome to hopefully the next sheriff of Flathead Valley, Jordan White.
Thank you all. I'm going to ask you to do that one more time, but it is good to be in the house of God. But to imagine as a political candidate to talk about liberty in Liberty Fellowship on a Sunday under God's covering is one of the greatest gifts and blessings that I've had this campaign season or in my life. So let's give it to God. I'm going to be conscious of time. It does get away from me. It is a true privilege to be here, and just to have met Pastor Chuck Baldwin was a breath of fresh air. In most of the times I get to speak, it's 3 minutes, and we know that it takes a lot more time. This will be for the first time before I jump into anything else. I do want to acknowledge my wife, Natalie. There were 3 people involved in this decision that I made when I committed to running for sheriff. That was God, my wife, and me. I hoped and prayed that when we made that decision and we joined that road together, that God would see fit to fill the vacuum that we were creating behind us with men and women of God who would lift us up, support us in prayer. I wasn't even worried about financially. I know God's got that taken care of, because that lasts for a few months while we run a political campaign. But the reality of this battle that we fight as we strive to hold on to our values, what we see as near and dear to our lives and as families and people, is a fight that we fight every day. And when I signed up to be sheriff, it wasn't to run out every day and make political speeches and hope for the best. It was a commitment that for as long as God sees fit and I hold that office, that it'll be a fight every day. And for those of you who stand behind us, we need your prayers, your love, and your support every day. My journey to get here is an unlikely one. When I looked at politics and I thought, man, I hate politics. I didn't like what I would see on the national level. I didn't understand what I saw on the local level. But that wasn't abnormal, because I had a different beginning. I had the opportunity to be homeschooled early in my life because my parents felt that they could do a better job teaching us what they thought was important than the school system could. That single choice that they made has changed the course of all of our lives in this community beyond what we may ever know in our lifetimes. I know that each of you make those decisions too. I'm 40 years old. I turned 40 during this campaign. It was one of the other interesting things that happened since I signed the dotted line. But that puts me at a different time in my life. 30 years ago, it wasn't popular to be homeschooled. And my parents made a choice to homeschool us when the state of Montana and the Office of Education didn't know if it was appropriate for a parent to have that much authority over their child's life, is to teach them how to read and write and do math. I was homeschooled during the siege of Ruby Ridge. I knew the people that were there. I knew Bo Greitz. My parents didn't have any assurances when we took up that challenge to plot our own course and to live life differently, because at that time, homeschooling wasn't popular. It's what you did when you were unable to socially integrate as a child or as a parent with normal civilization. But that wasn't my parents. My mother was highly educated. My father was highly experienced, a decorated man of the Navy that came back and worked hard in this valley with deep roots, who just believed they could do it better. That was my beginning, and because of that, nobody told me that I was supposed to have permission to make changes in my life and in people's lives. But at 18, I was an EMT. I'd been hit by a car, our house burned down. But at 18, I became an EMT, and the first person that I worked on died in a crumpled car, and I laid in that car for 45 minutes while the firemen cut the car out from around her, and I listened to her dreams that she had for her life, her children, her husband, and her future. That's a lot to swallow for an 18-year-old. But it also propelled me in my life in a very unique way, because from that moment forward, I hadn't had permission to do anything drastic yet, but I hadn't asked for it either. But I started on this path that was ignited in me to serve our community and to serve God and to say yes to impossible opportunities that I didn't understand. So I became an EMT, I became a fireman, I became a cop, and I started to create new programs. And I began to work around obstacles that I saw, and I was pretty good at it. All the way as I trained new deputies, and I taught them that it's our values, our beliefs, and our character that separate us from anyone else. I shared my heart with them. I shared my beliefs, my love for God, my love for freedom, the protection that we are promised in the Bill of Rights and by the Constitution, because I see as we exploded in this valley in the early 2000s and we were hiring lots of deputies, it was our way at that time to put a stake in the ground and say, we're going to hold on to what makes this community great. What I didn't understand is I was getting the opportunity to see young officer after young officer after young officer, and each one of them, that same message went out. And I believed it more and more each time I taught it. And you'll know in your own lives that as you experience something and you have things happen to you, it's not until you begin to teach from that place that you truly learn the lessons that it offered. My career blossomed. I was mentored by 3 sheriffs. I was given opportunities that no one else was given, including being assigned to domestic terrorism training, to work with groups that no one else wanted to work with, all the way until I became the undersheriff. And my first act as the undersheriff was to bring God back into the Flathead County Sheriff's Office when I created our chaplain program. And I sat in my office and prayed for the future of Flathead County and each chaplain that would serve in their respective roles to serve our community after that time, and I had no idea where that would take us. God had one more lesson for me, which was to believe that the impossible truly is possible, even when everyone else says it isn't, and that was when I left to create the helicopter rescue program today we know as Two Bear Air. That took me across, not only across Montana, but around the entire country, meeting new people and having the opportunity to be influenced from people around the world. And I realized just how unique our community is. But more importantly, I realized how much we had at stake. Because as I integrated with other communities, other public safety organizations, and other officers, they would tell me what they had lost, the standards that had slid in civilization, and we would talk about the way that kids have changed. Kids didn't change. We just started to let them down. I was comfortable. I was an executive making a 6-digit salary, and I was in the place that most of our community likes to live in, which is called no man's land. There's not enough pain to force us to change, and there's not enough hope to force us to change. I stayed there and thought, man, this is a comfortable place to be. So God gave me the opportunity to crash a helicopter, barely live through it, and remind me as I swam to shore under the moonlight that each day from that day forward would be a gift. Not that every day before that wasn't a gift. I just took that gift for granted. So I knew at that moment that this was where I belonged. I knew this was the time for our community. And as I've campaigned and I've met amazing leaders in our community like Pastor Chuck Baldwin and each one of you, the people at the rally, the people in other organizations around the valley who are working tirelessly to change our future, to hold on to Christian values, to hold on to hope, to give those kids a compelling future to believe in and know that they can raise their families and live the life they want, knowing they won't be oppressed, and believing in the possibility that a sheriff will stand between the darkest darkness in the name of Jesus Christ and their freedom and lead them. I'm proud to be that man, and I couldn't do it without all of the support. I couldn't do it without my wife and family. This campaign has been one of the roughest rides I could ever take, and just many, many opportunities for God to say, I have you. I turned 40. That wasn't the big one. On April 10th, my mother died unexpectedly. After 6 weeks of pure hell in the hospital and watching her slip away until she was gone, and it finally to be rewarded yesterday when we had a brand new nephew born. That's life, folks. That's what we signed up for. That's what we get. And it's not that any of us are given anything but one more opportunity, one more tweak each day to become the very best us. So why am I running for sheriff? First of all, God said to. Second of all, because it is the natural progression in my journey to being the very best man that God has spent 40 years creating. And you're all part of it. I thank you for this opportunity. I appreciate your support. And thank you for supporting me in all of this, Chuck Baldwin.